What on earth is this? I stared intently at the video playing on my smartphone. It showed my home. My and my husband's bedroom. I have an app installed on my phone that streams footage from our home security cameras. And in that footage, there were images of my husband with another woman. Were they embracing? Their proximity was too intimate to be explained away as just friends or acquaintances. Then, I heard voices. You sure she doesn't suspect anything? Yeah, I've been doing exactly as you said. It's perfect. She's clueless, completely believes me. Huh, I can picture it. They laughed together, then playfully tumbled onto the bed. I was left speechless by what I was seeing. Because that woman was my very own sister. I'm Nancy Hadley. I'm 50 years old. My husband, David, who's turning 55 this year, and I have been married for 20 years. We don't have any children, and we've been living together, just the two of us. Because we were both working, we had a relatively comfortable life. But all that changed about 10 years ago. That's when David was diagnosed with early-onset dementia. But as time went on, his errors became more significant. He began forgetting business meetings with clients, forgetting how to do his job altogether, making work a challenge. In everyday life, he couldn't remember where he'd placed things, how to dress himself, and his sense of direction became so bad he'd bump into things. There was even a time when he left the kettle on the stove, almost causing a fire. So, David and I sought advice from my sister, Anne, who runs a care home. We had him tested at a hospital she recommended, and that's when he was diagnosed with early-onset dementia. David had to retire from his job, and now we have a caregiver from Anne's facility come to our home twice a week. Nowadays, I'm the breadwinner of the family, busy working every day. Nancy, how's David doing? It was the day our regular caregiver, Ms. Johnson, came to our home. That day, Anne came with her. And you came too? Yeah, he's your husband after all, so I'm worried too. Ever since we started relying on Anne's facility, she would often stop by before I left for work. She's been caring for David like a brother ever since we got married because, as she often said when we were younger, she always wanted a big brother. She was the one who was most heartbroken when David was diagnosed with dementia. Even though she herself was supposed to be busy with work, the fact that she would check in on us frequently like this was truly appreciated. Thanks to Anne and Ms. Johnson, I'm able to leave David at home with peace of mind while I go out to work. If I didn't have my income, our household finances would fall apart, so I have nothing but gratitude for the two of them. However, they can't come on weekends, so the burden of caregiving falls on my shoulders alone. I'm dealing with work on weekdays, taking care of David on weekends, and I hardly have any time for myself. I wasn't really aware of it myself, but I must have been tired. A nurse who was familiar with me at the hospital where I took David for his regular checkup noticed my fatigue. We've known each other for nearly 10 years, so it seems she can tell even the slightest things. Mrs. Hadley, it's inevitable that caring for your husband is hard, but you need some time to rest by yourself. You're right, I understand that. I may be able to ask Anne and Ms. Johnson for help in a pinch, but I can't bear to cause them any more trouble. By the way, a new nurse came to this hospital the other day, who used to work at a specialized dementia hospital in New York. Maybe she can help you out. Look, there she is. When I looked in the direction the nurse was pointing, I couldn't believe my eyes. It was Amy, my best friend from college. Amy seemed surprised to see me too, but we hugged each other and celebrated our reunion. Amy, who was active in the softball club in college, was still a sharp-looking woman with a neat short haircut. Nancy, you haven't changed at all. Neither have you, Amy. I'm so glad to see you. Amy told me that she had waited for her children to grow up, divorced her husband, and returned to her hometown. Just let me know when you're free for a cup of coffee, she suggested, when David came out of the examination room in his wheelchair after finishing his tests. Oh, this is my husband David. I guess it's been ages since our wedding. That's right. It's been a long time. I'm Nancy's friend from college. Amy, bending down to match the eye level of David seated in the wheelchair, paused for a moment. Amy? Something wrong? Oh, sorry. David, we met once at your wedding. Is that so? I'm looking forward to your future care. Thank you in advance. David smiled at her and replied. Amy seemed to be looking at David with a somewhat meaningful expression. Probably noticing my puzzled look, she stood up with a smile. I've taken care of many patients like your husband, so I might be able to give you some advice. I think I can be of some help, so feel free to ask. Yeah, I'll rely on you for sure. Thanks, Amy. We waved goodbye to each other. After that, there were several occasions when I met Amy, such as when I went to get David's medicine or when his health deteriorated. Each time, Amy would look at me with concern, but I pretended not to notice and brushed it off. A few months after my reunion with Amy, David and I visited the hospital together. Just as David was called in for an examination, I heard, "Nancy." When I turned towards the voice, there was Amy, looking serious. "Amy, is something wrong? Your husband, David, just went in for his examination. Do you have a moment to spare?" Sure, I guess." Amy guided me to a counseling room. "Nancy, how is it, taking care of David? Are you worried about me?" "Thanks." I discussed David's recent health condition, and also mentioned how the lack of breaks was taking a toll on my body. Amy listened intently to my story. I thought she was just concerned about my well-being, but then she began with, "Actually, Nancy." The following words she spoke were hard to believe. "It was about a week before I met you again," Amy started. She was walking around town shopping when she spotted Anne with a man. She was familiar with Anne's face, as she's my sister, but Amy felt like she recognized the man's face. When Amy called out to them and introduced the man as her boyfriend. "It was when we met at the hospital again that I realized it was David, your husband. It all seems so confusing." "That's surprising. No wonder you had a strange look on your face back then." But Amy had seen Anne and David together in town a week before we met again. However, David seemed entirely unaware of Amy's presence. "I was different back then. I had longer hair, down to my shoulders, and I was wearing glasses. I looked totally different." That might explain why he didn't recognize her. But still. "Also, there's one more thing that's been bothering me." According to Amy, David's responses at the hospital felt terribly unnatural for someone with dementia. She said that his behavior was exactly like someone she'd seen in the hospital where she used to work, who was pretending to have dementia. "The man I saw in town was walking confidently, responding clearly. He looked perfectly healthy. Could it have been a mistake? Perhaps you misidentified him?" "I don't think so. You know David has those distinctive moles under his right eye, right? The man with and had them too. It's kind of a sexy look for a guy." "I'm sorry, I shouldn't be talking about your husband that way." Amy apologized, seemingly realizing that her comment was a bit inappropriate. "But it's true, David does have those moles. It's not common to find someone else with the same face and mole positioning." So, could it be that David has been pretending to have dementia for 10 years, and he's having an affair with Anne? The story was hard to believe, but Amy was not one to lie. "Honestly, I don't think this hospital is very good," Amy confessed. "What? The doctors here aren't great, and I've heard bad rumors too. Doesn't it seem odd that they have so many patients? So I think you should get a proper check to see if David really has dementia," Amy said with a serious look on her face. Struck by Amy's words, I went to a big box store and bought a home security camera. I placed it in inconspicuous spots in the living room and bedroom to secretly record what was happening while I was at work. I set it up to watch on my smartphone and checked in during breaks. Sure enough, David's behavior was different from what he showed me. He was not lost or confused about where things were placed. He was living quite normally. Moreover, when Ms. Johnson, who I had asked to take care of David, arrived, there was no sign of her caring for him. Furthermore, I found out that Anne had been frequently visiting my house while I was away. On top of that, their conversations were clearly recorded on the footage. "You're not getting caught pretending to have dementia, right, David?" "Yeah, because I'm doing just as Anne suggests. Pretending not to know the date or where things are is working perfectly. Pretending not to write or go outside thinking it's day when it's actually night would be good too. Nancy is a trusting person, so I don't think she'll suspect anything." "Is Ms. Johnson okay? Won't she spill the beans?" She's fine. She's a single mom with a kid, so she needs money. I've been giving her a little higher salary and she's been keeping quiet." After laughing together, they would flirt and head to the bedroom. I was left speechless when I saw the footage. I couldn't believe my sister and husband were conspiring behind my back. But the evidence was clearly left on the footage. I was lost, faced with the undeniable truth. A few days later, I felt the urge to talk to Ms. Johnson, who had been taking care of David. When I contacted Ms. Johnson, she said she would be available the following Saturday. I visited her apartment and showed her the footage. She looked resigned, apologized to me with tears in her eyes, saying, "What's in this footage, is the truth. I've been deceiving you all this time and I'm truly sorry. I don't have a license, and I was struggling to find another job. I had no choice but to go along with what Anne said because she hired me with such attractive terms. As Ant had said in the footage, she was a single mother, raising her child on her own, and she needed money. However, she felt guilty because she knew she was aiding in deceiving someone. Thanks to that guilt, I was able to get her testimony. She also entrusted me with copies of receipts, daily reports, and her diary from that time. No matter how much I needed money, I did something unacceptable as a human being. I am really, really sorry. She kept apologizing over and over again. In addition to the evidence and testimony provided by Ms. Johnson, I decided to collect more proof. After visiting a few related parties and hearing their stories, I consulted with my lawyer and decided to confront David and Ann at the scene of their affair. On a typical weekday, I pretended to go to work as usual and waited near my house. When Ann arrived at the house and it seemed like the right time when the two of them likely got busy, I came back home. Capturing the scene, they panicked, unable to escape, and I said coldly, "I know everything now. David, I heard you messed up your precious job. Got sidelined and started to hate your work?" This was something his coworker had told me. David had been saying to his colleagues, "There's nothing more I can do here. Nancy is making good money. I want to quit and live a laid-back life." Looking at my calm demeanor, David began to confess in a hurry. "It wasn't from me, it was Ann who seduced me. She said we could pretend to have dementia and be supported by you. While you are at work, we can meet as much as we want. Even Ms. Johnson was hired by Ann for the sake of an alibi." His words suggested the one at fault is Ann, not me. At David's words, Ann went hysterical and began to rage. What the heck? Even David was fully on board with the plan. And now he's trying to duck out and avoid responsibility. That's cowardly. Shut up. You were the one who kept pushing me into this. I just went along with what you said. I could feel my heart growing colder as the two of them bickered at each other, stark naked. I couldn't stand this situation with these two any longer. That's enough. Both of you get out. I threw them out of the living room window, along with their clothes and Ann's purse that were scattered on the floor, and then shut the window. They kept banging on the window, saying things like "open up" and "let us explain." But I just closed the curtains and ignored them. When they wouldn't stop banging on the window, I sent them a message on WhatsApp saying, "Be quiet. If you don't want the cops called, leave now," and suddenly, they fell silent. For a few days afterward, they kept coming to the house and sending messages on WhatsApp, which got on my nerves, so I sold the house and moved to a weekly rental apartment. In fact, when David was diagnosed with dementia, I had changed the title of our jointly owned house to my name. David, who had retired, no longer had the ability to pay the mortgage, and I changed the title in advance, thinking it would be a hassle if a dementia patient had decision-making authority in case of an emergency. I was able to sell the house for more than I expected, and I purchased an apartment with the money I had quietly saved up. I hadn't foreseen a situation like this, but I must say, good job past Nancy. And so, I divorced David. I also claimed division of assets against David. It doesn't matter whether David has the ability to pay or not. It's a statement that you two did this to me. I'll never forgive or forget it. What follows is what I heard through the grapevine. After divorcing me, David remarried and now lives in her house. However, it seems that they are not doing very well. This is just my assumption, but I think David and Ann were just caught up in the excitement of their affair. Once they get married, they can no longer just be lovers. Living together, for better or worse, things will come to light. And they will need to accept each other, recognize each other, and sometimes turn a blind eye. But it must be difficult for those two, who remarried in the aftermath of the affair. And even if they were to discuss breaking up, both of their parents have already passed away. The house where David and I used to live had already been sold. David doesn't have a place to return to now. They don't have any other family to rely on, no place to escape, so they have to deal with everything by themselves. Well, I couldn't care less. Actually, I would say they got what they deserved. Due to Ms. Johnson's revelation, Ann's facility had its license revoked and was closed. It seems that the facility was not making enough profit to repay the amount of money they had borrowed from the bank when they opened. So, and now has a significant amount of debt. That seems like a sufficient price for a sister who stole her sister's husband. It seems the quack doctor who issued the fake diagnosis faced trouble too. Following the incident, his staff, including Amy, quit one after the other, making it impossible to keep the business running, leading to the closure of his clinic. Apparently, he'd been accepting requests from some unsavory sources, issuing false medical reports like he did for David, and in return, they'd refer patients to him. This was the truth behind why he had so many patients, despite lacking the skill and any good reputation. After learning the truth, I was shocked by how outrageous some doctors can be. But I had to admit my fault too. I was too trusting. I took my sister's word and the quack doctor's claims at face value. According to Amy, I'm too kind and I trust people too much. I don't like to doubt people, but these days I'm reflecting, realizing that I need to scrutinize what people tell me more and think for myself. Amy, by the way, seems to have found a new job at a large general hospital in the neighboring town. Her work experience in a New York hospital was highly regarded, and it seems she's already earned the trust of those around her and is enjoying her work. And on Amy's recommendation, Ms. Johnson also started working at the hospital cafeteria. Wow, adorable! Amy's eyes were sparkling at the sight of a puppy frolicking with a ball. This puppy is a male miniature dachshund I brought home about a month ago. He's my precious partner, soothing my heart and body when I come home tired from a long day at work. Since this little guy arrived, Amy has started to drop by my apartment more often. He's just so cute, I can't help but come see him. She says that, but in reality, she's coming because she's worried about me. She won't admit it though. I've lost my husband, but now I get to spend this enjoyable time with my best friend. I find myself thinking that a single life, enjoying the company of a fellow woman, doesn't sound too bad after all.